Hey, tonight we are going to explore the forgotten world of medieval scribes, those tireless craftsmen whose quills danced by candlelight in the year 1298. The scriptorium awaits your presence, where time moves to the rhythm of careful brushstrokes and the soft scratch of parchment. In the hushed monastic silence, where daylight filters through narrow windows and illuminates ancient wisdom, you will discover both the meditative beauty and profound challenge of preserving knowledge before the printing press changed everything. The scent of ink, the ache of concentration, the discipline of perfection. A world where a single misplaced letter might mean a day's work lost, yet where each completed page became an enduring treasure of civilization. If you're enjoying these historical journeys into restful sleep, I'd be so grateful if you could like, share, and subscribe to help our little community of history dreamers grow. It truly means the world to have you here with us each night. I'm curious, what's the oldest book you've ever held in your hands? And did you imagine the person who created it? Now, dim your lights, settle into your most comfortable position, and let the ambient sounds of your room fade away as we travel 8 centuries into the past, to a world where each word was a treasure and each page a lifetime. You wake before dawn in the small cell you share with 2 other brothers of the Benedictine order. The stone floor beneath your feet is cold as you slip from your narrow bed, careful not to disturb the others still enjoying the last moments of slumber. November has arrived with its biting chill, and your breath forms small clouds in the dimness. Drawing your woolen habit closer around your body, you whisper a morning prayer, thanking God for another day to serve through your craft. Outside your window, the stars are still visible in the deep blue canopy of pre-dawn sky. The monastery grounds are silent save for the occasional rustle of wind through the bare branches of the linden trees. You make your way to the washing area, where a basin of water awaits. The shock of the frigid water on your face banishes the last remnants of sleep from your mind. You rinse your hands meticulously. Clean hands are essential for your sacred work ahead. Your daily routine has been the same for years now. After morning prayers with your brothers in the chapel, where your voices rise in perfect Gregorian harmony under the vaulted ceiling, you break your fast with a simple meal of dark bread and ale. The bread is dense and nourishing, if plain. The monastery's baker has added a touch of honey today, a small blessing that brings a smile to your tired face. You eat mindfully, knowing the long hours ahead require sustenance. When the bells toll for the first working hour of the day, you make your way through the cloisters toward the scriptorium. The covered walkway protects you from the elements, but offers no shield from the November chill. Your sandaled feet tread the familiar path as the eastern sky begins to lighten behind the monastery walls. Birds are beginning their morning songs. In the garden, nature's own devotional, the scriptorium door creaks as you push it open. The room is still dark, and you are among the first to arrive. Along the walls sit high desks where the monastery's most valuable treasures are created. Not gold or jewels, but knowledge preserved in ink and vellum. You light several candles from the single flame kept burning overnight, moving carefully between the workstations, illuminating each space with a warm glow that barely holds back the darkness. You reach your desk and set down your writing case, a wooden box containing your most precious possessions, quills of various sizes trimmed to your exact preference, small containers of pigments, burnishing stones, and your personal knife for scraping mistakes from vellum. The tools of your trade are humble, but require enormous skill to wield effectively. Settling onto your wooden stool, You feel the familiar discomfort of its hard surface. The cushion you once used was deemed too luxurious by the abbot, a small mortification of the flesh to keep you mindful of God's presence. Your back already anticipates the deep ache that will build as the day progresses. You roll your shoulders and stretch your fingers, preparing them for the precise work ahead. The manuscript you are copying rests on the left side of your slanted desk, a theological commentary by Thomas Aquinas. On the right lies the blank parchment that awaits your careful hand. You touch it gently, feeling its smooth surface prepared from calfskin. You remember the lengthy process of its creation, the soaking, scraping, stretching, and polishing that transformed animal hide into this perfect writing surface. Each sheet represents hours of work before even a single letter is formed. The light is still too dim for detailed work. You use these precious, quiet moments to prepare your inks. From your case, you remove a small cake of black pigment, a mixture of lamp black, gum arabic, and egg white that you prepared last week. With practiced movements, you add a few drops of water and begin to grind the cake with a small pestle, working it until it reaches the perfect consistency, not too thick to flow from your quill, not too thin to fade with time. As more brothers enter the scriptorium, the room gradually fills with the subtle sounds of preparation. No one speaks. Communication happens through gestures and nods. Speech is unnecessary and would only disturb the concentration required for your sacred task. The scriptorium master moves silently between workstations, checking progress and offering guidance with the merest touch of his hand or raise of his eyebrow. When the first true light of day begins to stream through the narrow, high windows of the eastern wall, you select a quill from your case goose feather, trimmed and cured to perfection over many weeks. You test its point against your thumbnail, satisfied with its firmness and flexibility. Drawing a small piece of pumice stone across the parchment one final time, you ensure its surface is perfectly smooth and ready to receive the ink. You dip your quill into the ink with a practiced motion that takes only enough to write a few letters. Too much would risk a blot, a disaster that could ruin hours of work. Holding your breath slightly, you begin to form the first letter of the text, a capital I, that will later be illuminated with gold leaf and vibrant colors by the monastery's finest artists. The morning light strengthens gradually, but never becomes adequate for your detailed task. Even at midday, the scriptorium remains a realm of shadows and candlelight. You position your candle to cast light without creating glare on the parchment, a delicate balance that shifts with the hours. The flame flickers with every subtle movement of air, causing shadows to dance across your work. Your hand moves steadily across the page, forming each letter of the Latin text with methodical precision. The script is textualist, quadrata, formal, angular, and demanding absolute consistency. Each character must be the same height, the same width, with perfectly parallel vertical strokes. The space between letters and words must be identical throughout. There is no room for variation or personal expression, only faithful reproduction. After completing a few lines, you pause to rest your fingers. You flex them slowly, feeling the tension that has already built in the muscles. Though you've been a scribe for 15 years, the physical demands never lessen. Your writing hand, bears calluses that have built up over time. Hardened skin that tells the story of countless pages completed in service to God and knowledge. The cold begins to seep into your bones as the morning progresses. The scriptorium is among the least heated rooms in the monastery. fire poses too great a risk to the precious manuscripts stored here. Instead, you rely on your woolen habit and the small brazier of coals shared between 3 scribes. Occasionally, you hold your hands near its meager warmth, just long enough to restore feeling to your stiffening fingers. Your stomach begins to signal its emptiness. But the mealtime bell is still hours away. The discipline of your order teaches you to ignore such distractions. The mild hunger sharpens your mind, keeps you present with your task, or so the abbot reminds you during his sermons on the virtues of modest eating. The silence of the scriptorium is a presence unto itself, not the absence of sound, but a positive force that supports concentration. What noises do exist form a gentle backdrop to your work. The soft scratch of quills against parchment, the occasional quiet cough, the whisper of a page being turned in a source text, the subtle shifting of bodies trying to find comfort on hard wooden stools. You reach a passage that requires red ink, the rubrics that denote important sections of the text. With careful movements, you set aside your black ink and prepare a small amount of vermilion made from powdered cinnabar. The vivid red is startling against the cream-colored parchment. You form these letters with even greater care, knowing that mistakes in this precious pigment are more difficult to correct. Midway through the morning, you notice an error in your copy, a word omitted from a sentence. Your heart sinks. There can be no crossing out, no visible corrections in this formal manuscript, destined for the library of a wealthy cathedral. With a small sigh that you keep entirely internal, you reach for your scraping knife. With delicate movements, you remove the thin layer of ink from the parchment, careful not to cut through or leave a noticeable mark. The correction will take time, pushing your day's goal further from reach as the sun reaches its zenith, barely visible through the high, narrow windows. The scriptorium master signals for the midday break. You carefully place a protective piece of parchment over your work and cap your inks. Standing for the first time in hours, you feel the stiffness in your back and legs. Your neck aches from being bent forward, and your eyes burn from the strain of focusing in poor light. The walk to the refectory is a welcome relief. Your legs appreciate the movement after hours of stillness. In the dining hall, you take your place at the long wooden table with the other brothers. Conversation is permitted now, but remains subdued and primarily focused on monastery business or spiritual matters. The meal is simple, a thin vegetable soup, more bread, and for today, being Wednesday, a small portion of fish. You eat slowly, savoring each bite, knowing that your afternoon's work requires just as much concentration as the morning's. While you eat, another brother reads aloud from spiritual texts, his voice a gentle accompaniment to the meal. Today, he shares passages from St. Augustine's Confessions. You listen with half an ear, having copied the very same text last year. Your mind drifts to the page awaiting you in the scriptorium. You've completed perhaps a quarter of your daily goal. The thought brings a flicker of anxiety that you quickly offer up in prayer. After the meal and a brief period for reflection in the chapel, you return to the scriptorium. The afternoon light is already beginning to fade, though it's barely past midday in November. You relight your candle, which was extinguished to save precious wax during your absence. The flame seems dimmer now, struggling against the growing darkness. You resume your position, adjusting your stool slightly to ease the pressure on your lower back. Your fingers are still warm and limber from walking and eating, and you take advantage of this temporary comfort to make swift progress. On your page, the familiar rhythm of dipping, writing, and carefully monitoring the flow of ink from your quill becomes meditative. In these moments, when your body finds a temporary harmony with your task, you feel closest to God, as though your hand is guided by something greater than yourself. This peace is interrupted when the door opens, sending a draft across the room that makes all the candle flames dance wildly. The youngest novice enters, apologizing with a gesture for the disturbance. He moves between the desks, delivering fresh candles to those running low. When he reaches you, he notices your hunched position and quietly places a second candle near your work, a small kindness that brings unexpected moisture to your eyes. The extra light is welcome as the afternoon deepens toward evening. Your eyes are beginning to tire, and distinguishing the fine details of your exemplar becomes increasingly difficult. You squint slightly, bringing the text into better focus, knowing this habit contributes to the weakening eyesight that afflicts many older scribes. Several of your brothers now use glass lenses to magnify their work, a concession to age you hope to avoid for at least a few more years. Your work slows as fatigue sets in. Each letter requires more concentration. Each line must be checked more carefully for errors. The cold has settled deep into your joints now, making your movements less fluid. You flex your writing hand frequently, trying to ward off the cramping that threatens to end your day's productivity. The scriptorium master passes behind you, pausing to observe your progress. His shadow falls across your work, and you stop writing until he moves on. His nod of approval brings a small surge of pride that you immediately temper with a silent prayer for humility. Pride is dangerous, even pride in work done for God's glory. As the light fades completely outside, the scriptorium becomes a cave of flickering shadows. The candles create small islands of light, around which the scribes hunch like devoted supplicants. The smell of beeswax mingles with ink and parchment, creating the distinctive scent that permeates your clothing and hair. Visitors to the monastery often comment that they can identify the scribes by this smell alone, a badge of honor among your brotherhood. Your concentration is profound now, a narrowing of the world to just your hand, the text, and the growing page. The monastery bells mark the hours, but you barely register them. Your breath falls into rhythm with your writing, inhaling as you dip your quill, exhaling slowly as you form each word. This deep focus is why many consider the scribe's work a form of prayer, a devotion of body and mind. The sound of the Vespers bell finally breaks your concentration. You blink several times, coming back to awareness of your surroundings. Looking down at your work, you feel a mixture of satisfaction and disappointment. You've completed less than you hoped, though what you've done is without error. Quality matters more than quantity, as the abbot often reminds you, but the manuscript has been promised to an important bishop by Christmas. The schedule allows little room for delay. With careful movements, you secure your work for the night. The precious parchment is covered with a protective cloth. Your quills are cleaned and stored, your inks capped tightly to prevent drying overnight. Your tools are arranged in perfect order for tomorrow's continuation. These closing rituals are as important as the preparation. A proper ending honors the work completed and sets the stage for what's to come. Your body protests as you stand. The small of your back sends sharp complaints up your spine. Your neck can barely turn, and your right hand has stiffened into a claw-like position that will take hours to relax completely. Your eyes burn from the strain and the candle smoke, and your head throbs dully from maintaining such intense concentration in poor light. As you make your way to Vespers, you pass one of the oldest brothers, Peter, who has been a scribe for over 40 years. His back is permanently hunched now, his eyes rheumy and weak, his hands twisted with arthritis. Yet he still produces a page of text each day, working more by touch and memory than by sight. You exchange a nod of understanding, a silent acknowledgement of your shared vocation and its costs. In the chapel, you struggle to focus on the prayers. Your mind keeps returning to the page you left unfinished, planning tomorrow's work. The words of the Psalms wash over you, familiar and comforting. Your voice joins those of your brothers in songs sung together thousands of times, creating a harmony that rises to the rafters. After Vespers comes the evening meal, another simple offering of bread, cheese, and watered wine. You eat mechanically, your mind still in the scriptorium. Conversation flows around you, but you contribute little. Your brothers understand. Each has his days of silence and preoccupation. The community supports these rhythms of work and rest, of speech and silence. Before Compline, the final prayer of the day, you visit the infirmary. Brother Michael, the herbalist, has prepared a poultice for your aching hand. The warm paste, smelling of comfrey and rosemary, brings immediate relief as he wraps it around your swollen joints. This too is part of your routine, the physical aids that make tomorrow's work possible. Without them, your career would have ended years ago. How is the Aquinas progressing? Brother Michael asks softly as he ties off the bandage. Slowly, you admit. The text is dense, and my eyes are not what they were. He nods sympathetically. Consider using a reading stone for the exemplar. Pride serves no one if it leaves work undone. You acknowledge his wisdom with a slight bow of your head. Perhaps it is time to accept such help, though the admission of failing eyesight feels like surrendering to age. After Compline, you return to your cell. The small room is even colder now, but a warm stone has been placed at the foot of your bed. Another small mercy organized by the cellarer for the scribes during winter months. Your roommates are already preparing for sleep. Moving quietly in the near darkness, you remove your day habit and slip into your night clothes. A simple linen shift that provides little warmth but keeps the rough wool of your blanket from irritating your skin. Before lying down, you perform a series of gentle stretches learned from an ancient brother many years ago, movements designed to ease the particular pains of a scribe. Finally, you slide beneath your blankets, positioning your body carefully to avoid pressure on your most painful areas. The stone at your feet radiates blessed warmth. You remove Brother Michael's poultice and flex your hand slowly, feeling the improved mobility. It will stiffen again overnight, but morning exercises will prepare it for another day's labor. Sleep comes quickly, born of physical exhaustion and mental fatigue. Your dreams are often filled with text, letters floating and rearranging themselves, sometimes forming perfect pages, other times dissolving into meaningless patterns. Tonight, as you drift into slumber, you see the page you'll begin tomorrow, already complete and beautiful in your mind's eye. Before dawn, you'll rise and begin again. The routine varies little from day to day, season to season, year to year. It is a life of repetition, of small variations within a fixed structure. Yet within this seemingly rigid existence, you find profound meaning. Each page completed is a victory against time and ignorance. Each manuscript preserved might survive centuries, might inspire faith or learning in people not yet born. This is why you endure the cold, the discomfort, the failing eyes and aching hands. This is why you have committed your life to copying books by candlelight in the year 1298, because words matter, knowledge matters, and your patient labor ensures that neither will be lost to future generations as you fall deeper into sleep. Your conscious mind surrenders to dreams, but your fingers still twitch slightly, forming phantom letters on invisible parchment. Even in rest, you remain a scribe, dedicated to your sacred craft until your final breath. The night cradles you in darkness, far deeper than the scriptorium's shadows. Tomorrow, you will wake again to cold stone floors and pre-dawn prayers. You will light your candle, prepare your inks, and bend your back to the eternal task of preserving what deserves to endure. It is a hard life by modern standards, but one filled with purpose and quiet joy in your dreams. The manuscripts you've completed over the years gather around your bed like old friends, their pages turning gently in a spectral breeze. They whisper, their contents, prayers, philosophical arguments, historical accounts, saints' lives, a chorus of knowledge that exists because of hands like yours. In this half-conscious state between waking and sleeping, you feel the weight of your contribution to the great chain of human understanding. You wouldn't last a day as a medieval scribe, with its physical demands and monastic discipline, but you, the actual you, whose hands have created beauty and meaning through patient labor, have lasted decades, adding your small but essential thread to the vast tapestry of written history. As this chapter closes its eyes, another tale begins to stir. The echoes of quills scratching parchment fade into the distance, and new whispers emerge from the shadows of time between stone walls where time moves like honey. Ancient knowledge awaits your patient hand. The monastery bells mark hours that stretch like shadows across worn floors. Candlelight dances on parchment as quills scratch secrets from centuries past. Tonight, you walk the hallowed paths of those who preserved wisdom when the world slumbered in darkness. The soft glow of morning. Light filters through the high, narrow windows of the scriptorium, casting gentle patterns across the worn stone floor. You awaken to the distant sound of bells, their melodic chimes floating through the cool air of your small cell within the monastery walls. Your eyes adjust slowly to the dim light as you become aware of the rough texture of your woolen blanket against your skin. The year is 1298, and you are about to begin another day as a copier of manuscripts in this secluded sanctuary of knowledge. You rise from your simple straw mattress, feeling the cool stone beneath your bare feet. The chill of the morning air causes you to shiver slightly as you reach for your habit, the coarse fabric a familiar comfort as you pull it over your head. The wool scratches against your skin, but you hardly notice anymore. It has become as much a part of you as your own breath. You fasten your rope belt around your waist, its fibers rough against your fingers. From somewhere deep within the monastery, you hear the soft murmur of voices. Your brothers are already gathering for the morning prayer of prime. You move with practiced ease through the narrow corridor, your footsteps barely making a sound on the ancient stones. The corridor opens into the chapel, where shafts of amber light filter through stained glass, creating pools of color on the floor. The air is heavy with the scent of incense, frankincense, and myrmixed with the earthy smell of stone and wood that has absorbed centuries of prayers. You take your place among the other monks, feeling the familiar rhythm of community as voices rise in unison, Latin phrases flowing like water. The words are ancient, passed down through generations, connecting you to those who stood in this same spot hundreds of years before. The chanting surrounds you, vibrating through the stone, through your bones, centering your thoughts for the day ahead. After prayers comes a simple breakfast in the refectory. Wooden bowls of porridge, sweetened slightly with honey, and pieces of dark bread fill your stomach. You eat in silence as one of the brothers reads from the scriptures, his voice a gentle backdrop to the sounds of spoons against bowls and the occasional cough or clearing of throat. The porridge is warm and comforting, sliding down your throat and warming you from within, with sustenance for both body and soul. You make your way to the scriptorium. This large room with its high ceiling is where you spend most of your waking hours. As you enter, you're greeted by the distinctive scent that is unique to this sacred space, the sharp tang of ink, the subtle muskiness of parchment, the faint sweetness of beeswax from the candles that will be lit as daylight fades. The room is already coming to life. Several of your brothers are at their desks, silent figures bent over their work. The scriptorium operates under a rule of silence, communication necessary only through gesture and whisper. This quiet is not oppressive, but reverenter recognition of the holy nature of preserving and copying God's word and the wisdom of the ancients. You approach your writing desk, a sturdy wooden structure angled to catch the best of the northern light from the tall windows. Your chair, worn smooth from years of use, creaks softly as you settle into it. The familiarity of this space brings a sense of peace. This is where you belong, where your purpose unfolds one letter at a time. Before you lies your current projector, copy of Augustine's City of God. The manuscript you are copying from rests on a slanted board to your left, held open by small weights. To your right is the partially completed page you were working on yesterday. You take a moment to run your fingers over the parchment, feeling its smooth yet slightly textured surface. This leaf was once the skin of a calf, carefully cleaned, stretched, and prepared. It took weeks to create this single sheet, a reminder of the preciousness of the materials and the importance of your task. You open your small wooden box of tools. Inside are your quills, carefully cut from goose feathers. You select one, examining its point critically. It will need resharpening. From your box, you also take your small knife, its bone handle worn from years of use. With practiced movements, you trim the quill's point to the perfect angle, then make a small slit in the center to help the ink flow evenly. The soft scraping sound of the knife against the quill is soothing, a prelude to the day's work. Next, you reach for your ink pot, a small ceramic vessel nestled in a wooden holder to prevent spills. The black ink inside is a mixture you prepared yourself yesterday: oak galls, iron sulfate, and gum arabic, combined according to a recipe passed down through generations of scribes. You stir it gently with a small stick, ensuring it is not separated overnight. Before you begin writing, you take a piece of pumice stone and gently rub it over today's section of parchment. The stone removes any remaining oils or imperfections that might cause your ink to bleed. The soft scraping sound fills your ears as fine dust rises in the beam of sunlight crossing your desk. Finally, you are ready to begin. You dip your quill into the ink, careful not to take too much, then tap it gently against the side of the pot. You bring the point to the parchment and begin to form the first letter, ornate I, that will later be embellished with gold and vibrant colors by the illuminator. The scratch of quill against parchment joins the soft symphony of similar sounds around the room. Each letter requires precision and care. You form them in the Caroline minuscule script, each character measured and proportional. Your wrist guides the quill in fluid movements, trained by years of practice to maintain consistency across the page. The morning passes this way, in quiet concentration. Your world narrows to the space between your eyes and the parchment, to the movement of your hand, to the words forming beneath your quill. Time seems to suspend itself in this sacred act of preservation and creation. You are conscious of your posture, occasionally rolling your shoulders to relieve the tension that builds there. The work is physically demanding in its stillness hours of sitting hunched over your desk, your neck bent, your eyes straining to see the fine details of your work. As the sun reaches its zenith, the bells ring for the midday prayer of sext. You carefully set down your quill, wiping it clean before placing it back in its holder. You sprinkle fine sand over your work to absorb any excess ink before gently tipping it off into a small container for reuse. You rise from your desk, feeling the stiffness in your back and legs. The brief walk to the chapel gives your body relief. From its stationary position, again, you join your brothers in prayer. The rhythm of the day marked by these sacred pauses. After prayers comes the main meal of the day. Today, there is a simple stew of vegetables from the monastery garden, flavored with herbs and a small portion of salted fish. The dining hall is quiet, save for the voice of the reader and the gentle sounds of eating. You savor each bite, knowing that your body needs this nourishment for the afternoon's work. When the meal concludes, there is a brief period of rest allowed. Some monks retire to their cells, others walk in the cloister garden. You choose the garden, drawn by the need to rest your eyes by gazing at distant horizons. The garden is a place of order and beauty, with neat rows of medicinal herbs and vegetables. A small fountain bubbles at its center, the sound of water a gentle counterpoint to the occasional birdsong. You sit on a stone bench, feeling the warmth of the sun on your face. The garden smells of rosemary and thyme, of damp earth and growing things. Bees buzz lazily among the flowers, and a gentle breeze stirs the leaves of the apple trees along the wall. This moment of connection with the natural world refreshes your spirit for the afternoon's labor. All too soon, the bell calls you back to work. You return to the scriptorium, settling once more at your desk. The afternoon light has shifted, casting longer shadows. You adjust your writing board slightly to make the best use of the available light. As you resume your copying, you become aware of a different quality to the silence in the room. It has deepened somehow as each scribe enters. That state of focused attention where time seems to flow differently. Your quill moves across the parchment, each letter following the last in a dance of ink and light. You pause occasionally to stretch your fingers when they begin to cramp, or to refill your quill with ink. These small breaks punctuate the steady rhythm of your work. Sometimes you glance up to rest your eyes, looking out the window at the distant hills or watching the dust motes dancing in the beams of light that cut through the high windows. As the day progresses, the natural light begins to fade. The brother responsible for lighting moves quietly around the room, lighting candles and small oil lamps. The quality of light changes, becoming warmer, more golden. Shadows deepen in the corners of the room, but your workspace remains illuminated. The candlelight brings new challenges. The flickering makes the letters seem to dance on both the original manuscript and your copy. Your eyes strain more in this uneven light, and you must be even more careful with your ink, as shadows can disguise drops or smears until it's too late to correct them. You have been taught to protect the precious manuscripts from the candle's flame and wax. A small parchment shield attached to your candle holder deflects both heat and drips away from your work. Still, you must be vigilant, especially when fatigue begins to set in. And fatigue does come. The hours of intense concentration, the physical demands of maintaining your position, the strain on your eyes all take their toll. Your back aches, your neck is stiff, and your fingers cramp around the quill. Yet you persevere, offering up this discomfort as part of your devotion. You are copying a passage about the nature of time when the bell rings for vespers. The evening prayer. You finish the sentence, never leaving work in the middle of a thought before, setting down your quill and preparing your desk for tomorrow. You carefully cover your ink pot, clean your quill thoroughly, and place a protective covering over both the original manuscript and your copy. The transition from the intense focus of your work to the communal prayer requires a moment of adjustment. You join your brothers in the chapel, where candles illuminate the space with a warm, flickering light. The evening prayers have a different quality than those of the morning. There is a sense of completion, of gratitude for the day's work accomplished. After vespers comes a light supper: bread, cheese, and perhaps some dried fruit. You eat mindfully, aware of each flavor and texture. The simple food tastes rich after a day of mental labor. There is a gentle murmur of conversation now. The strict silence of mealtimes is relaxed slightly in the evening. Following the evening meal, there is time for study or personal devotion before the final prayers of the day. Some monks gather in small groups to discuss theological questions or listen to one of the older brothers share his wisdom. Others retire to their cells for private prayer or reading. You choose to spend this time in the monastery library, a treasure house of knowledge that few outside these walls would ever have the privilege to see. The room is lined with wooden shelves holding manuscripts of incalculable value. The collected wisdom of centuries preserved through the patient work of scribes like yourself by the light of a small lamp. You select a volume of Boethius, settling into a window seat where the last of the daylight provides additional illumination. The words on the page connect you to a mind that thought and wrote nearly 800 years before your time. This continuity across the centuries fills you with a sense of purpose and belonging to something greater than yourself. As full darkness falls, the bell calls you to Compline, the final prayer of the day. The chapel is now lit only by a few candles, creating a space of intimate shadows. The prayers are quieter, preparing the community for the great silence that will last until morning. Your voice joins with those of your brothers one last time today, the Latin phrases familiar as your own. Heartbeat after Compline, you walk in silence back to your cell. The corridor is dark now, lit only by an occasional oil lamp in a wall niche. You know this path by heart, your feet finding their way even in the near darkness. Your cell is cool and dark when you enter. By the light of a single candle, you prepare for sleep. You remove your habit and fold it carefully, then put on your simple linen sleeping garment. Before extinguishing the candle, you kneel for your private prayers, thanking God for the day's work and asking for strength for tomorrow. Finally, you lie down on your narrow bed. The straw mattress rustles beneath you as you find a comfortable position. You pull the woolen blanket up to your chin against the night's chill. Your body aches pleasantly with the fatigue of honest work, and your mind is calm with the knowledge of a day well spent in service as you drift toward sleep. Fragments of the text you copied today float through your mind, words about eternity, and time about the city of God and the city of man. In your work as a scribe, you are a link in a chain that stretches back to the apostles and forward into a future you cannot imagine. Each letter you form, each page you complete, is both an act of preservation and an act of faith. The next morning arrives with the familiar sound of bells. Your eyes open to the grey light of dawn filtering through the small window of your cell. Another day of copying begins. so similar to yesterday yet never quite the same. After morning prayers and a simple breakfast, you return to the scriptorium. Your manuscript awaits, the page you completed yesterday, now dry and ready for the next. To begin, you settle into your chair, adjust your writing board, and prepare your materials with the same care as always. Today, you notice that the quality of light is different. Clouds have moved in overnight, diffusing the sunlight into a soft, even glow that is actually ideal for your work. There will be fewer harsh shadows to contend with, though the overall light may be dimmer. As you begin to write, you feel yesterday's strain in your fingers and wrist. This is a familiar discomfort, one that will ease as your muscles warm with use. The first few letters are always the most challenging, as your body remembers the precise movements required. The page you are copying today contains an intricate initial letter that marks the beginning of a new chapter. This will require special attention. You carefully copy the text, leaving a large space where the illuminator will later add the decorated letter. You make a small note in the margin, indicating what letter should go there and what colors the original uses. This collaboration between scribe and illuminator is a dance of skills that has been perfected over centuries, while you are responsible for the accurate transmission of the text. The illuminator brings beauty and visual meaning through color and design. Together, you create something that speaks to both mind and heart. Mid-morning, the scriptorium door opens, and the abbot enters with a visitor, a nobleman who supports the monastery's work. The monks continue writing, but there is a subtle shift in the atmosphere, an awareness of being observed. You remain focused on your task, though you can hear the murmured conversation as the abbot shows the visitor the various works in progress. They pause at your desk, and you sense their presence without looking up. The abbot speaks softly, explaining the text you are copying, the technique you are using. The nobleman asks a question about how long such work takes. You continue forming your letters with steady hands, offering this demonstration of your craft as an unspoken answer. After they move on, you permit yourself a small breath of relief. Such interruptions are rare, but always slightly unsettling. You dip your quill again and resume your rhythm, the soft scratch of pen on parchment returning you to your centered state of focus. As midday approaches, your concentration is interrupted by a problem. The ink in your pot has thickened slightly, making your lines less consistent than they should be. You signal discreetly to the brother who serves as the armorius, the keeper of materials, who brings you a small amount of fresh ink. You blend it carefully with what remains in your pot, testing the consistency on a scrap of parchment until you are satisfied. These small challenges are part of every day's work. Sometimes it is the ink, sometimes a flaw in the parchment, sometimes a quill that refuses to hold its point. Each requires patience and adaptability, qualities that the scriptorium cultivates as surely as it produces manuscripts. The midday bells ring, and you join your brothers for prayers and the main meal. Today's conversation, during the brief period when speaking is permitted, centers on news brought by a traveling friar. He speaks of political tensions between the French king and the Pope, of crop failures in the north, of a new cathedral being built in a neighboring diocese. These glimpses of the outside world are like looking through a small window at a vast landscape. They remind you that beyond the monastery walls, the world continues its tumultuous journey. Here, within these walls, you maintain a different rhythm, one measured in prayer times and completed pages, rather than in political upheavals or changing seasons after the midday rest. You return to the scriptorium to find that the clouds have thickened further, darkening the room significantly. The armorius gives instructions for additional candles to be lit earlier than usual. The flickering light creates new challenges, but you adapt, shifting your position slightly to make the best use of both natural and artificial light. The afternoon progresses slowly. Your back begins to ache more persistently, and you notice that your eyes are straining to distinguish the finer details of the text. You blink frequently and occasionally look up at the distant wall, focusing on something far away to relieve the strain of constant close work. You reach a passage that gives you pause, a complex theological argument that must be copied with absolute accuracy. You read it several times in the original before beginning to transcribe it, making sure you understand the meaning so that you can correctly interpret any abbreviated words or unclear phrases. This intellectual engagement with the text is one of the aspects of your work that you treasure most. Though your primary task is faithful copying, not interpretation, you cannot help but absorb the wisdom contained in the words that flow from your quill. Over the years, this daily immersion in sacred and philosophical texts has formed your mind, as surely as the physical labor has shaped your hands. As the afternoon wears on, rain begins to fall outside. The sound of droplets against the high windows creates a soothing backdrop to your work. The quality of light shifts again, becoming even more diffuse. More candles are lit, their warm glow a contrast to the cool grey light of the rainy day. The rain brings a new scent into the room, fresh, earthy, and clean. It mixes with the familiar smells of ink, parchment, and beeswax. You find the combination oddly comforting, a reminder of the continuity of natural cycles outside these walls, while you work to preserve human knowledge within them. When the bell rings for vespers, you have completed less than you had hoped. The difficult light and the complex passage slowed your progress. As you clean your quill and cover your work, you feel a momentary frustration, quickly followed by acceptance. The work proceeds at its own pace, and rushing leads only to errors that must later be corrected at even greater cost of time. The evening prayers seem especially meaningful today. The Psalms speak of God's wisdom and the brevity of human life, themes that resonate with your daily work of preserving words beyond the span of any individual life. Your voice joins with those of your brothers, the harmony of the chant rising to the vaulted ceiling. After the simple evening meal, instead of going to the library as you did yesterday, you seek out Brother Thomas, the monastery's most experienced illuminator. You describe the initial letter you left space for today, wanting to ensure that he understands your vision for how it should complement the text. Brother Thomas listens thoughtfully, then takes you to his corner of the scriptorium where he keeps his pigments and tools. He shows you a similar letter he completed recently, the deep blues and rich reds standing out against the gold leaf background. The intricacy of the design is breathtaking. Vines and flowers intertwine with fantastic beasts, all framing the letter that begins a passage about divine creation. This collaboration reminds you that the manuscript you are creating is not solely your work, but part of a greater whole. Each person in the monastery contributes according to their skills: the parchment maker, the scribe, the illuminator, even the brother who mixes the ink. Together, you create something more beautiful and enduring than any of you could produce. Alone, as night falls fully, you attend Compline and then return to your cell. The rain continues, its gentle patter on the roof, a lullaby that helps ease you towards sleep. Your body aches from the day's work, but it is a familiar discomfort, almost a friend that accompanies you into dreams. The The next dawn brings clearing skies and bright sunlight streaming through your small window. After prayers and breakfast, you return to the scriptorium with renewed energy. The page you begin today will contain a long passage describing the heavenly Jerusalem, a text filled with vivid imagery that you can almost see as you copy the words. Your quill moves steadily across the parchment, forming letters that will be read long after you are gone. There is comfort in this thought that something of your labor, your devotion, your presence in this world will remain. Not your name, for that is rarely recorded, but the work of your hands, preserving wisdom for generations yet unborn. Mid-morning brings an unexpected challenge. A younger brother, new to the scriptorium, accidentally knocks over his inkpot. The black liquid spreads quickly across his desk, threatening to drip onto the precious manuscript below. There is a moment of frozen horror, then quiet, efficient action. The armorius rushes forward with cloths to contain the spill. The young monk's face is pale with distress, but no one speaks harshly to him. Such accidents are rare, but not unknown. Thankfully, the manuscript is saved, though the monk's copy of it will need to be started again on a fresh sheet of parchment. This incident serves as a reminder of the fragility of your work and the care it requires. A moment's inattention, a slip of the hand that is all it would take to damage materials that represent weeks or months of labor. The young monk will be more careful now, having learned this lesson in the most direct way possible. As the day continues, you fall into the familiar rhythm of your work. There is a meditative quality to the repetitive motions, to the focus required for each letter. Your mind enters a state of flow where time seems both to stretch and to compress. Before you realize it, the midday bell is ringing. After prayers and the main meal, you take your rest in the cloister garden again. The rain has left everything fresh and vibrant, the herbs releasing their scents in the warm sunlight. You close your eyes for a few moments, letting the sun warm your face, and the sounds of the garden birdsong, buzzing insects, the distant voice of a brother singing as he works, wash over you. This brief connection with the living world outside the scriptorium helps restore your balance. When you return to your desk, your mind is clear and your body refreshed, ready for the afternoon's work. The manuscript you are copying contains marginal notes made by previous readers, small comments, clarifications, occasionally a question mark beside a difficult passage. These are not part of the text you are to copy, but they tell their own story of how this knowledge has been engaged with over time. You imagine the monks who came before you, reading these same words, pondering these same ideas. Late in the afternoon, the abbot enters the scriptorium again, this time to speak with one of the senior scribes about a commission from a nearby cathedral. Their quiet conversation is barely audible, but it reminds you of the connections between your monastery and the wider church. The manuscripts produced here travel far beyond these walls, carrying knowledge and faith to other communities. As the natural light begins to fade, candles are lit once more. The transition from daylight to candlelight is always a significant moment in the scriptorium, marking the day's progression and changing the nature of the work. Colors appear different in candlelight, warmer, richer, but less distinct. Details that were clear in daylight now require more careful attention. The final hours of the day's work are often the most challenging. Your body is tired, your eyes strained, your concentration beginning to waver. Yet there is also a sense of accomplishment as you see how much has been completed since morning. Each day adds to the growing manuscript, bringing it closer to completion. When the bell rings for vespers, You complete your final line and prepare your desk for tomorrow. The parchment before you holds hundreds of carefully formed letters, words that flow into sentences, ideas preserved through your patient labor. Tomorrow, you will continue where you left off, adding another page to the manuscript that is slowly taking shape under your hands. The evening follows its usual patterned prayers, a simple meal, a period of study or conversation, and finally Compline and the great silence. Yet each day in the monastery has its own character, its own small variations within the larger structure. Today, there was the spilled ink, the conversation about the cathedral commission, the particular quality of light after the rain. As you prepare for sleep, you reflect on the passage you copied today, about the heavenly Jerusalem with its streets of gold and gates of pearl. The imagery is vivid in your mind, a contrast to the simple stone walls of your cell. Yet there is a connection to both your monastery and that heavenly city are ordered spaces dedicated to divine purpose, places where earthly labor serves higher meanings. Before extinguishing your candle, you examine your hands in its light. They are stained with ink that never quite washes away completely, marked by small calluses where the quill rests. These are the hands of a scribe, shaped by their purpose just as surely as a blacksmith's hands are shaped by hammer and forge. You lie down on your bed, pulling the woolen blanket around you against the night's chill. Outside your small window, stars are visible in the clear sky after the rain. The discipline of your days, the cycle of prayer and work, the physical demands, the mental concentration has shaped not just your hands, but your entire being. You have become an instrument through which knowledge passes from past to future, a living link in an ancient chain. Sleep comes easily after the day's labor. Your dreams are filled with letters that transform into birds and fly from the page, with manuscripts that open like doors into other worlds, with the quiet scritch-scratch of quills writing by themselves in an empty scriptorium lit by mysterious light. Morning arrives once more with the sound of bells. You rise, ready to continue the work that will occupy your days for years to come. Each manuscript completed is both an ending and a beginning, the conclusion of one project, and the start of its journey into the world and into the future. This is your life as a medieval scribe, days measured in prayer times and pages, in the wearing down of quills and the emptying of inkpots. It is a life of physical hardship and intellectual engagement, of tedium and transcendence, of individual labor that contributes to a collective purpose spanning centuries. The scriptorium awaits, its familiar scents and sounds greeting you like old friends. You take your place at your desk, prepare your materials, and open the manuscript. Your quill touches the parchment, and once more, you begin to write. The golden light of another day filters through the high windows, illuminating dust motes that dance in the air above your work. Around you, your brothers bend over their own manuscripts, each engrossed in the same sacred task. The soft sounds of turning pages, of quills scratching, of occasional sighs or shifted positions, create the gentle symphony that accompanies your days. This is not just work, it is devotion, preservation, creation. Each letter you form is an act of faith, a belief that these words matter, that they should continue beyond the life of any individual. That knowledge is a flame that must be tended and passed forward through time's darkness. Let us now drift gently into the next forgotten story, where ancient crafts and timeless wisdom continue to whisper their secrets across the centuries. Golden flecks dance upon ancient vellum, time suspended in the sacred space between heartbeats. You stand where countless souls have dwelled before, fingers poised to continue an ancient tradition, breathing life into words that will long outlast your mortal form. A devotion written in precious pigments and patient love. The first rays of morning light filter through narrow windows of the scriptorium, casting long fingers of gold across worn wooden tables. You stir slightly, your body already accustomed to waking before the bells toll prime. Your small chamber, nestled within the eastern wing of the monastery, holds little. A narrow bed with a stropped mattress covered by woolen blankets, a simple wooden stool, a water basin, and a small chest containing your few belongings. The stone floor beneath your feet feels cool as you rise, a sensation that grounds you to the present moment. To this day, in the year of our Lord 1298, you dress quietly in your simple woolen robe. The fabric worn soft from years of use, it carries the lingering scent of beeswax and ink, the perfumes of your vocation. As your fingers deftly tie the cord around your waist, you glance out your window at the monastery gardens below, where morning dew still clings to herbs and vegetables tended by your brothers. Beyond the garden walls, fields stretch toward the village, and beyond that, the misty outline of forests that mark the boundary of your known world. Your routine is as familiar as breathing. Water from the basin splashes against your face, its chill banishing the final wisps of sleep. You run damp fingers through your hair and over your tonsure, the circular shaved portion of your scalp that marks you as one devoted to God's service. The morning is quiet save for the distant cooing of doves and the occasional rustle of robes as others begin their day. The walk to the chapel is peaceful, your sandals padding softly against stone pathways worn smooth by generations of devout feet. The morning air carries the scent of damp earth, wood smoke from the kitchen fires being kindled, and the ever-present hint of incense that seems to have permeated the very stones of the monastery. You join your brothers in prayer, your voice blending with theirs in the ancient rhythms of the Matins service, the Latin words flowing from your lips without conscious thought, a river of devotion that has shaped the contours of your life. After breaking your fast with a simple meal of dark bread, cheese, and watered wine, you make your way to the scriptorium. This large chamber, with its high vaulted ceiling and generous windows designed to capture the precious daylight, has been your true home for nearly 20 years. Your chest swells with a subtle pride as you pass through the heavy wooden door. Few are granted the privilege of working here, among the monastery's most skilled scribes and Your talent for delicate brushwork and steady hand with quill and ink has earned you this position, one you know to be a sacred trust. The scriptorium is already stirring with quiet activity. Brother Thomas, the elderly monk who serves as keeper of books and overseer of the scriptorium, nods to you as you enter. At various tables, a handful of your brothers have already begun their day's work. Some trace guidelines onto fresh parchment, others mix pigments in small shells, while still others hunch over their work, quills scratching softly against vellum. In the rhythmic dance of text formation, you make your way to your assigned desk, positioned near one of the eastern windows to take advantage of the morning light. Your current project awaits you, a commission from a wealthy nobleman who wishes to present a book of hours to his daughter upon her marriage. The manuscript is nearly complete, lacking only the final illuminations for the office of compline. The page before you shows the outline of what will become a night scene of the Holy Family resting during the flight into Egypt, with a border of intertwined ivy and nightshade flowers. Before you begin, you observe the morning ritual of preparation. From your wooden box, you withdraw your tools, Quills fashioned from goose feathers, carefully trimmed and cured, a small knife for sharpening them, pieces of pumice stone for smoothing parchment, and your precious collection of pigments. Each color resides in its own container. Some are powders awaiting mixture, others already prepared in small earthenware pots, sealed with wax dot. You begin by examining the parchment before you. Vellum made from the skin of a young calf, stretched, scraped, and prepared over many days until it reached this perfect state. Smooth, cream-colored, and receptive to ink and paint. Your fingertips detect the subtle texture of the material, still bearing the whisper of the animal it once was. This particular sheet costs more than a common laborer might earn in a month. A reminder of the precious nature of your work. The morning progresses in comfortable silence, broken only by the occasional whispered consultation between monks, the soft scraping of a knife reshaping a quill point, or the subtle sounds of someone rising to stretch tired muscles. The scriptorium operates under strict rules of quiet speech, is permitted only when necessary, and then kept to hushed tones. Communication often happens through small gestures or notes, scratched on wax tablets kept at hand for this purpose. You set about preparing your pigments for the day's work. From a small pouch, you withdraw lapis lazuli, precious stones imported at great cost from distant lands beyond the Holy Land. These you grind carefully with a mortar and pestle, reducing them to a fine powder that will form the base of the brilliant blue for the night sky in your illumination. The grinding is methodical work, requiring patience and strength. The soft grinding sound fills your immediate space, a rhythmic accompaniment to your breathing. Next comes the binding medium egg, white that you've collected and carefully preserved. You mix this with the blue powder and a touch of gum arabic, working it to the perfect consistency. Too thin and it will run. Too thick and it won't flow from your brush. Years of experience guide your hands, allowing you to judge the mixture by its feel between your fingers and its behavior when tested on a scrap of parchment. The sun climbs higher, casting its light more directly through the windows. Brother. Thomas moves quietly through the room, checking progress, offering occasional guidance or approval with a gentle hand on a shoulder. When he reaches your station, he pauses slightly longer, watching as you prepare a delicate brush from squirrel, hair bound to a wooden handle with fine thread and resin. His nod of approval warms you, though you have been at this work for many years. The recognition of your skill still brings quiet satisfaction. Now, with pigments prepared and tools arranged, you bend to the actual illumination. First, you apply a thin layer of gesso to areas that will later receive gold leaf. The brush feels like an extension of your hand as you trace the delicate outlines of stars that will adorn the night sky. The gesso must be allowed to dry completely before the gold is applied. So you set this page aside and turn to the border work that can be completed while waiting. The border design features intertwined vines of ivy, symbolic of faithfulness and eternal life. With a different brush, fine as an eyelash, you begin to apply the base color of green, mixed from verdigris scopa that has been exposed to vinegar until it forms a blue-green crust. The pigment is both beautiful and temperamental, known to eat through parchment if improperly prepared. You've learned to balance its vibrant color with the right amount of binding medium to tame its corrosive nature. As you work, the world beyond your desk fades away. There is only the breath in your lungs, the subtle movements of your wrist and fingers, and the emerging beauty taking form beneath your brush. This is the state that you cherish most, a form of prayer through creation, where your concentration becomes so complete that it feels like communion with the divine. Hours may pass unnoticed in this state, your body remembering to dip your brush or change pigments while your conscious mind remains immersed in the flow of creation. The distant ringing of bells pulls you partially from your reverie, the call to terse, the mid-morning prayer. With careful movements, you secure your pigments and lay your brushes across a small wooden rest. The illumination is beginning to take form, the border half completed with its sinuous green lines, awaiting the addition of small flowers and gold highlights that will come later. You rise, feeling the stiffness in your back and shoulders from the hours of bending over your work. Your brothers do the same, each carefully setting aside their tools before filing out of the scriptorium toward the chapel. The change in posture brings awareness back to your body, the slight ache between your shoulder blades, the tightness in your neck, the cramping in fingers that have held brushes and quills with delicate precision. The brief service provides a welcome respite. Your voice joins with those of your brothers in the ancient chants, the Latin syllables washing over you like cool water. Standing after hours of sitting brings blood flowing back to your legs, and the gentle movements of liturgy, standing, kneeling, bowing, help ease the physical strains of your labor. Your eyes, so focused on minute details all morning, now rest by gazing at the larger space of the chapel, its stone arches rising toward heaven. After terce comes a brief period when speaking is permitted, allowing necessary consultation about the day's work. You approach Brother Thomas with a question about the gold application for your current project. The nobleman who commissioned the book has provided enough funds for shell gold, gold powder, mixed with gum arabic and applied with a brush. But you wonder if the importance of the marriage might warrant the more luxurious and brilliant raised gold leaf for the stars in the night sky. Brother Thomas considers your question thoughtfully. The bride is his only daughter, he says, his voice low and gravelly from years of relative silence, and I believe he wishes to impress her new family, who are of higher standing than his own. Yes, use the leaf for the stars. They should shine like the heavens themselves. We have enough left from the bishop's psalter completed last month. With this decision made, you collect the materials needed for gilding, a small leather pouch containing tissue-thin sheets of gold leaf, a knife with a broad, flat blade, and a container of gilding liquid made from a mixture of glare-beaten egg whites, wine, and a few precious drops of honey. The process of gilding requires both patience and confidence. The gold leaf is so delicate that even a breath can disrupt it. When you return to your desk, sunlight now streams more directly through the windows, illuminating motes of dust that dance in the golden beams. The scriptorium has warmed somewhat as the day progresses, though the thick stone walls of the monastery keep the space cooler than the summer air outside. This is a blessing, as excessive heat can make the gold leaf even more difficult to manage. You check the gesso base you applied earlier. It is dried to a perfect tackiness, with a small brush dipped in water infused with a few drops of honey. You dampen the gesso areas, preparing them to receive the gold. Then, with the flat knife, you carefully lift a piece of gold leaf from its resting place between sheets of fine tissue. The gold is so thin that it appears to float above the blade, trembling with the slightest movement of air. With held breath and steady hands, you transfer the gold to the dampened area of the parchment. It adheres to the sticky surface, and you use a soft brush made from squirrel hair to gently press it into place, working from the center outward. Any excess gold is carefully gathered. Nothing so precious would ever be wasted to be used for smaller details, or returned to the gilder's cushion for future use. After applying gold to all the stars in your night sky, you set the page aside to dry completely. This will take time, so you return to the border work, adding small nightshade flowers in deep purple and white among the green ivy vines. Each flower requires multiple layers of paint, starting with base colors and building up to highlights that give the illusion of dimension and form. The bells ring again, calling the community to sext, the midday prayer, followed by the main meal of the day. You feel hunger now, your body reminding you that it has been sustaining careful work for many hours on the simple breakfast taken at dawn. Once more, you secure your materials and join the procession to the chapel. After prayers, the community moves to the refectory, where tables are arranged in long rows. You take your accustomed place, standing until the abbot enters and gives the blessing. The meal is eaten in silence, while one of your brothers reads aloud from the works of the Church Fathers. Today, it is passages from St. Augustine's Confessions. The food is simple but nourishing, a thick pottage of lentils and vegetables, bread still warmed from the ovens, and small beer brewed within the monastery walls. Despite the rule's admonition against gluttony, you eat with good appetite, knowing that the afternoon's work will require sustained attention and steady hands. As you eat, you occasionally flex your fingers beneath the table, working out the stiffness that comes from hours of precise movements. Your eyes, too, welcome the rest, focusing on distant walls instead of the minute details of manuscript work. After the meal comes a brief period of rest. Some monks use this time for reading or contemplative prayer, others for a short sleep to refresh themselves for the afternoon's labors. You choose to walk in the cloister garden, allowing your body to move after the morning's stillness. The enclosed garden is laid out in an orderly fashion, with medicinal herbs, vegetables, and flowers arranged in geometric patterns that please both the eye and the sense of divine order. The summer air carries the scent of lavender, thyme, and roses. Bees move lazily among the blossoms, their soft buzzing a counterpoint to the distant sounds of workers in the fields beyond the monastery. Walls, you walk slowly, hands clasped behind your back, allowing your mind to wander briefly from the focused attention required by your craft. Ideas for future illuminations sometimes come during these walks, the curve of a petal suggesting the sweep of an initial letter, or the pattern of light through leaves inspiring a border design. When none is called, marking the afternoon prayer, you return to chapel, and afterward back to the scriptorium for the day's remaining work. The gold you applied before the midday meal has dried to a brilliant sheen. When you hold the parchment at an angle to the light, the stars seem to flare with inner fire, creating exactly the effect you had hoped for. Now comes the delicate process of burnishing, using a smooth stone or the tooth of a wolf or dog, carefully polished, to rub the surface of the gold until it shines like a mirror. You select a burnishing tool made from a wolf's tooth set in, a wooden handle passed down through generations of scribes in your monastery. Legend holds that it was brought back from the Holy Land by a monk who participated in the Third Crusade. Whether true or not, the tool has served countless illuminations before yours, its surface worn to perfect smoothness by years of use. The burnishing requires a gentle touch. Too much pressure can tear the gold or damage the parchment beneath. You work methodically, starting from the center of each star and working outward with small circular motions. Gradually, the gold transforms from a merely bright surface to one with a deep reflective luster that that seems to capture and intensify the light. When complete, these stars will seem to glow from within the page, even when viewed by candlelight. With the gold complete, you turn to the figures that will occupy the night scene, the Holy Family resting during their flight to Egypt. First comes the underpainting in thin washes of color, the deep blue of Mary's robe, more of your precious lapis lazuli, reserved for the most important figures, the earthier tones of Joseph's garments, and the delicate flesh tones of the infant Jesus. You work slowly, building up layers of transparent color to create depth and subtle variation. The face of the Virgin Mary receives particular attention. Her expression must convey both maternal tenderness and the sorrowful foreknowledge of her son's fate. Though the size of her face on the parchment is no larger than your thumbnail, you labor to imbue it with recognizable humanity and divine grace. As the afternoon light begins to shift, casting longer shadows across the scriptorium, you make adjustments to your working position to maintain the best light on your work. The illumination is taking form now, the figures emerging from the parchment as if they always existed within it, needing only your hand to reveal them. Background elements come next. A stylized palm tree offering shelter, a small fire casting a warm glow that contrasts with the cool blues of the night, distant hills rendered in simplified forms that suggest the foreign land of Egypt around you. Your brothers continue their own work, each absorbed in creation or transcription. Occasionally, a soft cough or the creak of a wooden chair breaks the silence. But these small sounds only emphasize the contemplative quiet rather than disturb it. This shared purpose, this communal dedication to preserving and creating knowledge and beauty forms the heartbeat of your existence. As the day's light begins to wane, Brother Thomas moves through the scriptorium, checking on each monk's progress before the day concludes. When he reaches your desk, he leans closer to examine, the illumination taking shape under your hands. His gnarled finger hovers above, never touching the gilded stars. "Excellent work," he murmurs, his voice barely audible. "The nobleman will be pleased, and more importantly, God's glory is served by such beauty." His words warm you more than any fire could, coming from Brother Thomas, who rarely offers praise. This is high commendation indeed. The bells ring for Vespers, the evening prayer. You carefully clean your brushes, a process you never rush regardless of the hour. Each is rinsed in a small pot of water, then shaped to a perfect point with your fingers before being laid in its proper place. Pigments are covered to prevent drying out or contamination. The precious gold leaf is wrapped in its protective tissue and returned to its leather case. Your workspace is left immaculate, ready for tomorrow's continuation. As the light fades and you join your brothers in prayer once more, your mind's eye still sees the colors and forms of your day's work. The illumination will continue tomorrow, and for several days afterward. Such detailed work cannot be rushed. But each day brings the manuscript closer to completion, another link in the long chain of knowledge and devotion, stretching backward to the ancients and forward to generations yet unborn. After Vespers comes the evening meal, lighter than the midday repast. Bread, cheese, and perhaps some preserved fruits from last autumn's harvest. Again, the community eats in silence while listening to sacred readings. You notice the tired faces of your brothers around you, each bearing the particular marks of their daily labor, the scribes with ink-stained fingers like your own, the brothers who work the fields with sun-darkened skin, the infirmarian with his attentive, watchful expression following the meal. There is a brief period of communal gathering in the chapter house, where the abbot addresses any matters concerning the monastery as a whole. Tonight, he reminds everyone of the upcoming feast day of Saint Benedict, for which special preparations will be required. Your mind briefly considers how this might affect your work schedule. Feast days mean additional services, but also special meals and a respite from the usual labors. When the gathering concludes, the time before Compline, the final prayer of the day, is yours to use as needed. Some monks retire immediately to their chambers for private prayer. Others assist with necessary chores around the monastery, and a few gather in small groups for quiet conversation on permitted topics. You choose to visit the library adjacent to the scriptorium, seeking inspiration for the remaining illustrations in your Book of Hours. The library is kept locked, its treasures too valuable to be left unprotected, but Brother Thomas readily admits you when you explain your purpose. Oil lamps burn in carefully positioned sconces, providing just enough light to see while minimizing fire risk to the irreplaceable volumes. The smell here is different from the scriptorium, older, deeper, a complex aroma of ancient leather, parchment, and the subtle mustiness that even the most carefully maintained books acquire over centuries. You move slowly along the shelves, your fingers trailing reverently over bound volumes chained to the reading tables. Eventually, you find what you seek, another Book of Hours completed by your monastery some 20 years earlier. Though you've seen it before, you study it anew, noting the particular way the illuminator rendered night scenes, how shadows were suggested with layered washes of color rather than opaque pigment by the light of a nearby lamp. You make quick sketches on a wax tablet, not copying directly but absorbing techniques and approaches that might inform your own work. This is how knowledge passes from hand to hand, generation to generation, not merely through the words copied, but through the methods of creation themselves. Each scribe and illuminator adding their own understanding to the flowing river of tradition. The bells call again, summoning all to Compline, the night prayer that marks the end of the monastic day. The chapel is dimmer now, illuminated only by candles that cast long shadows up the stone walls. The chanting takes on a different quality in this light, more intimate, more mysterious. The day's cycle of prayer concludes with the Salve Regina, a hymn to the Virgin Mary asking for her intercession through the night hours after Compline. The great silence begins. No speech is permitted until after prime the following morning. You walk back to your small chamber in silence, nodding respectfully to the abbot and other brothers you pass in the corridor. The monastery settles around you, creaking slightly as stones cool from the day's heat. In your chamber, you prepare for sleep. A small candle provides just enough light to see by as you wash your hands and face in the basin, the water now cool from sitting throughout the day. You change into a simple linen sleeping garment, draping your day robe carefully over the single chair to air overnight. Before extinguishing your candle, you kneel beside your bed for private prayer. Your mind returns to the illumination you worked on today, the Holy Family's flight to Egypt, and you find yourself praying for all travelers, seeking safety, all families protecting their children from harm. Your own hands, the instruments of your devotion and craft, you offer up in service for another day. Should God grant it to you as you slip beneath the woolen blanket on your narrow bed. Your body reminds you of the day's labors, the slight ache in your back, the stiffness in your fingers, the subtle strain around your eyes from hours of close focus. Yet these discomforts are familiar companions. the physical markers of a life dedicated to something larger than yourself. The darkness of your chamber is complete when the candle is extinguished, but your mind still sees colors: ultramarine, blue, vermilion, red, viridian green, and the luminous gold of stars against a night sky. These colors swim behind your closed eyelids, gradually fading as sleep approaches. Your last conscious thoughts are of tomorrow's work. The shadows you'll deepen, the highlights you'll add, the faces that will emerge more fully under your brush. As your breathing slows and deepens, you drift towards sleep, wrapped in the quiet rhythms of monastic life, a life measured in prayers and pages, in careful brushstrokes and silent devotion. The manuscript will continue tomorrow, one more day in the long, patient work of preserving knowledge and creating beauty. And though your name will never appear on the pages you illuminate, something of your spirit, your dedication, your understanding of both craft and faith will live on, speaking across centuries to eyes that will look upon your work long after your own have closed for the final time. Like the stars you've gilded on the page, your contribution will continue to catch the light and reflect it back, a small but luminous part of humanity's endless conversation with beauty, meaning, and the divine. In this knowledge, you find peace as sleep finally claims you, carrying you gently into dreams filled with colors that have yet to be mixed, images that await discovery by your patient hands come morning's light. Let us now drift gently into the next forgotten story, where ancient hands work by whispered candlelight and the sacred dance of creation continues in quiet. Corners of history's embrace ... between whispers of time and layers of dust. Ancient wisdom waits for your touch. Candlelight flickers over pages that have outlived kingdoms as you step into the sacred dance of those who preserved knowledge through darkened centuries their fingers. Like yours now, tracing the bridge between what was and what shall remain. The ancient oak door creaks softly beneath your palm as you push it open, revealing a space that exists somewhere between time and timelessness. You step into the manuscript preservation chamber of Mont Saint-Michel's library, the year 1298 embracing you with its particular center complex aroma of aging parchment, beeswax candles, and the lingering trace of sea salt carried on the breeze that sometimes finds its way through the narrow windows. The room feels both intimate and vast, a sanctuary where centuries converge in the quiet rustling of pages. Sunlight filters through the high, narrow windows, casting geometric patterns across the stone floor. The light appears almost tangible, dust motes dancing within its golden beams like tiny messengers between your world and times long past. You notice how the light moves differently here, slower, more deliberately, as if time itself respects the pace of preservation that unfolds. Within these walls, your woolen robe brushes against the rough-hewn table as you settle onto the wooden stool. Its surface is worn smooth from generations of scribes who sat here before you, their presence lingering in the subtle indentations beneath your fingertips. The wood holds the memory of countless elbows that leaned upon it, countless breaths that fogged its surface during cold winter mornings when even the most devoted preservationists' fingers grew stiff with chill. Before you lies a manuscript that requires attention, a collection of astronomical observations made by Arab scholars, translated through 3 languages before arriving here on the edge of the Western world. Its journey across continents and through centuries feels palpable as you carefully lift the cover. The binding creaks, a soft sound like a whispered greeting from another time. You reach for the small pottery dish of almond oil and beeswax, stirring it gently with a wooden spatula until it forms a smooth paste. The scent rises to meet you, sweet, yet earthy, reminding you of spring afternoons when the world beyond these walls bursts into flower. This mixture, passed down through generations, will nourish the leather binding, keeping it supple for decades to come. There is something profoundly intimate about this act, your hands becoming part of the continuous chain that stretches backward into history and forward into a future you will never see. With a clean linen cloth, you apply a thin layer of the mixture to the binding, your movements unhurried and methodical. The leather darkens slightly beneath your touch, the grain becoming more pronounced. You think of the animal that provided this skin, perhaps a calf that grazed on meadows now. Forgotten, its life transformed into this vessel of knowledge. The thought fills you with a sense of connection to the physical world that birthed these materials. The continuous cycle of transformation that allows wisdom to endure. The monastery bell tolls softly in the distance, its bronze voice marking the hour of none. The sound vibrates through the stone walls, a gentle reminder that while you work in seeming isolation, you remain part of a larger rhythm, the heartbeat of the community that sustains this sacred work. Outside these walls, brothers tend gardens, prepare meals, pray, and go about the hundreds of tasks that allow this place of preservation to exist. You turn your attention to the pages themselves, carefully examining each for signs of decay or damage. The parchment feels cool beneath your fingertips, alive in its own way. Each sheet represents weeks of work, from the raising of the animal to the careful preparation of its skin, scraped and stretched and polished until it became the perfect canvas for human thought. You find a page where the ink has begun to flake, tiny black particles clinging to the surface like scattered stars. With a small brush made from squirrel hair, you gently sweep away the loose particles, collecting them on a piece of clean parchment. Nothing is wasted. Here these fragments will be mixed with gum, Arabic, and transformed into new ink. The thoughts of ancient minds recycled into future writings. There is a poetic circularity to this process that brings a smile to your lips as you work. The afternoon light shifts, taking on the golden quality that signals the approach of evening. You reach for the small brass candle holder, fitting it with a fresh beeswax taper. The monastery produces these candles in its own workshop. The bees kept in wicker hives in the southern garden. The flame catches quickly, casting a warm glow that seems to breathe life into the illuminated capitals on the page before you. Gold leaf catches the light, transforming simple pigment into something that seems to radiate from within. You marvel at the artistry of the illuminator who created this page perhaps 50 years earlier. The delicate intertwining vines, the miniature scenes depicting the movement of celestial bodies. Their hands have long since returned to dust, yet here their vision remains. Preserved through your careful stewardship, you prepare a small batch of parchment glue from fish bladder, heating it gently over a candle flame until it reaches the perfect consistency, thick enough to bond, yet thin enough to apply without leaving a visible trace. The smell is unpleasant, slightly fishy and acrid, but familiar and reassuring in its utility. The same formula has secured loose pages and repaired bindings for centuries, a solution as reliable now as it was generations ago. With a thin wooden tool, you apply a minute amount of the adhesive to a corner where the parchment has begun to pull away from its neighboring page. Your movements are deliberate and focused, your breath slowing naturally as you concentrate on this delicate task. You hold the pages together with light pressure from your fingertips, feeling the slight warmth as the glue begins to set. Time seems to suspend itself in these moments of complete attention. The The world beyond this room, the political machinations of kings and popes, the changing fortunes of towns and families, will recede into insignificance. What matters is this connection between you and the knowledge held within these pages. The silent conversation between your living hands and the absent hands that first recorded these words. The smell of vegetable soup and fresh bread wafts through the air, signaling the approaching evening meal. Your stomach responds with a gentle rumble, reminding you that even in this work that seems to transcend physical concerns, you remain bound to your body's needs and rhythms. Soon you will join your brothers in the refectory, breaking bread and listening to the reader of the week recite passages from Augustine or Gregory as you eat in contemplative silence. But for now, you continue your work, carefully inspecting the manuscript's sewing structure where it connects to the spine. You find a spot where the thread has frayed, threatening to allow a gathering of pages to come loose. From your workbox, you select a needle already threaded with linen cord that has been coated with beeswax for strength and ease of use. The repetitive motion of the needle passing through the parchment folds induces a state of meditative calm. In, through, up. Over each stitch follows the pattern established by the original binder, perhaps a century earlier. Your work invisibly meshes with theirs, the new thread indistinguishable from the old once the repair is complete. This is how preservation has always functioned, not as dramatic intervention, but as quiet, consistent maintenance that leaves little trace of itself as you work. You reflect on the contents of the manuscript itself, observations of the movements of Jupiter and its moons, recorded by scholars in a distant land, translated, copied, and now resting here under your care. How many eyes have pored over these calculations? How many minds have expanded through contact with these ideas? The manuscript serves as a bridge, not just between cultures, but between individual human consciousnesses. Separated by vast distances of time and space, you become aware of a presence and look up to see Brother Thomas standing in the doorway, his elderly frame silhouetted against the light from the corridor. He has served as the monastery's master conservator for over 40 years. His knowledge accumulated through decades of patient work with countless manuscripts. He nods approvingly as his eyes take in your careful stitching. The binding on that one has always been troublesome, he says, his voice soft yet clear. The original cords were cut to short when it was first assembled in Toledo, a common mistake among the Spanish binders of that period. You marvel at his knowledge, not just of the text and its provenance, but of its physical construction. To him, each book is both a vessel of ideas and a unique physical object with its own history and peculiarities. This is the depth of understanding you aspire to, this intimate knowing that comes only from years of handling these treasures with attentive care. Brother Thomas moves closer, his steps measured and deliberate. He reaches for a small pot on the shelf above your work table, removing the lid to reveal a paste of a slightly different color than the one you've been using. Try this for the spine repair, he suggests. I've added a bit more alum to improve flexibility. These astronomical texts are consulted more frequently than others, so the binding needs to withstand regular opening. You accept his offering with gratitude, noticing the slight tremor in his hands that have repaired countless manuscripts, hands that have passed their knowledge to you through demonstration and gentle correction. One day, perhaps decades from now, you will be the elder conservator guiding a younger brother in this sacred work of preservation. The thought fills you with a sense of continuity and purpose. The paste has a slightly sharper smell than your usual mixture, the alum adding a mineral note to the familiar beeswax scent. You apply it carefully to the spine, feeling how it adheres differently, more firmly yet with greater flexibility. These small adjustments to ancient formulas represent the slow evolution of your craft, not innovation for its own sake, but thoughtful adaptation to serve the ultimate goal of preservation. As Brother Thomas watches your work with approving eyes, you think about the changes he has seen in his lifetime. The increasing availability of paper, though still not trusted for the most important texts. The gradual shift in writing styles. The growing exchange of manuscripts between monasteries across Christendom. Yet the fundamental task remains unchanged. Protect and transmit knowledge across generations. I remember when this text first arrived here, Brother Thomas remarks, gesturing toward the manuscript. I was younger than you are now. There was much debate about whether such knowledge from infidel sources should be kept within our walls. But Abbot William insisted that truth, regardless of its source, deserved preservation. He smiles slightly. He was considered quite progressive in his thinking. You consider how many such debates must have shaped the collection that surrounds you. Decisions about what knowledge to preserve, what to translate, what to share, what to keep secure. Each manuscript represents not just its contents, but countless human judgments about the value of particular ideas. Your work honors all of these: the original authors, the translators, the scribes, the illuminators, the binders, and the generations of preservationists who came before you. Brother Thomas leaves you to complete your work, his footsteps fading as he moves down the corridor. The candle has burned lower, casting longer shadows across your workspace. You finish, securing the loose gathering, and test the repair by gently opening the book at the treated section. The pages now turn smoothly, the structure holding firm yet flexible. Satisfaction warms you from within, another small victory against time's erosion. You move on to checking the condition of the oak boards that form the covers. One has developed a small crack near the bottom edge, a common occurrence as the wood continues to respond to changes in humidity even centuries after the tree was felled. From your box of supplies, you select a mixture of sawdust and hide glue, working it into a paste with a small bone tool. You press this mixture into the crack, using the edge of a thin horn spatula to ensure it penetrates fully. The repair will be nearly invisible once dried and polished, yet will provide crucial structural support to prevent further splitting. As you work, you notice evidence of previous repairs along the same board, slightly different in color and texture from the surrounding wood. Generations of conservators have addressed this same weakness, each buying the manuscript more decades of life. The knowledge of these previous interventions creates a sense of communion with those unknown brothers who came before you. Did they sit at this same table? Did they feel the same quiet pride in their careful work? Did they wonder, as you sometimes do, about the future hands that would one day touch these same pages? There is comfort in being part of this unbroken chain of caretakers, each adding their own small contribution to the preservation of human knowledge. The last light of day has faded from the windows, and now only candles illuminate your work. The darkness beyond the glass feels like a physical presence, highlighting the importance of this space as a repository of light. Both the literal light of carefully maintained flames and the metaphorical light of knowledge preserved within. These pages. Outside, the tide rises around Mont Saint-Michel, temporarily transforming it from peninsula to island, isolating this community and its precious library from the mainland until morning. You think about the peculiar safety provided by this tidal rhythm, how it has protected these manuscripts from the dangers of war and pillage that have claimed so many collections elsewhere. Nature itself seems to participate in the preservation of these fragile repositories of human thought, providing a moat more effective than any castle wall. The thought of this collaboration between natural cycles and human intention feels deeply appropriate. The bell tolls again, calling the brothers to vespers. You carefully secure your work materials, covering the small pots of adhesive and oil to prevent them from drying out overnight. The manuscript is placed in a wooden press, gentle pressure applied to ensure the repairs set properly. Tomorrow you will continue, perhaps moving on to consolidating flaking pigment on some of the illuminated initials. As you prepare to join your brothers in prayer, you cast a final glance around the room. In the dancing candlelight, the spines of countless manuscripts create a landscape of knowledge, geographical treatises beside theological commentaries, medical texts alongside poetry collections. Each represents countless hours of human labor. From the raising of animals for parchment, to the cultivation of plants for pigments, to the patient work of scribes and illuminators. But more importantly, each contains human thoughts and observations that might otherwise have been lost to time. The astronomical observations in the manuscript you've been repairing today will, centuries from now, provide valuable historical data to scientists with instruments its authors could never have imagined. The medical texts may preserve knowledge of plant remedies whose efficacy will be rediscovered by researchers in distant futures. The philosophical debates captured in careful Latin script will inspire thinkers not yet born. You extinguish all but one candle, conservation of resources being as important as conservation of manuscripts in monastic life, and make your way toward the chapel, the soft shuffle of your sandals echoing slightly in the stone corridor. The familiar scents of incense and beeswax greet you as you enter the sacred space where your brothers have already gathered, their voices rising in the ancient chants that mark the canonical hours. As you take your place and join the chant, your mind makes connections between this ritual and your work in the library. Both involve the careful preservation of ancient wisdom. Both require attention to detail and respect for tradition. Both connect you to generations past and future. The chanted psalms, like the manuscripts you tend, have been transmitted across centuries through countless human voices and hands, each link in the chain essential to the whole dot. After Vespers concludes, you join your brothers for the evening meal. Conversation is permitted during this final meal of the day, though it tends toward quiet discussions of the day's work or contemplative topics rather than worldly matters. Tonight, seated beside Brother Martin, who serves as the monastery's primary scribe, you discuss the unique challenges of preserving astronomical texts. The frequent consultation damages them, you observe, breaking off a piece of dark bread. Yet their value lies precisely in being accessible to those who would learn from them. Brother Martin nods thoughtfully. Perhaps we should consider creating a copy solely for regular consultation, preserving the original for posterity. Though it would take considerable time to reproduce those complex diagrams accurately. The conversation continues in this vein: practical problems and potential solutions. The weighing of resources against priorities, the balance between access and preservation that has always been the central tension in the librarian's craft. These discussions are themselves a form of preservation, as insights and techniques are shared verbally long before they might be written down in any formal treatise on conservation. After the meal, you have a brief period of personal time before Compline, the final prayer service of the day. Some brothers use this time for additional prayer or reading, But tonight you feel drawn back to the library. Not to work that would be inappropriate at this hour, but simply to sit in the presence of the manuscripts, to absorb the atmosphere of accumulated knowledge that permeates the space. The library is different at night, illuminated only by the light of your single candle. The manuscripts seem to withdraw into deeper shadow, as if sleeping, yet their presence remains palpably. Thousands of voices, temporarily silent, yet ready to speak again when next their pages are opened. You sit on your stool, letting the quiet of the space envelop you, feeling a profound sense of peace in your role as guardian of these fragile vessels of human thought. Your mind drifts to the manuscript you worked on today and its journey across time and space. Created in Baghdad, transported to Cordoba, translated in Toledo, and now resting here on this tidal island at the edge of Christendom. How many hands touched it? How many minds engaged with its contents? How many conservators before you noticed the troublesome binding and made their own repairs? You think about the unknown future conservators who will one day replace your repairs with their own. Will they work by candlelight as you do, or will new forms of illumination be discovered? Will they use materials familiar to you, or will they develop new adhesives and treatments? Will they speak Latin, French, or languages not yet born? The questions are unanswerable, yet contemplating them reinforces your sense of participation in something that transcends your individual existence. The bell calls you to Compline, and you reluctantly leave the library, carrying its atmosphere of timeless contemplation with you. The final prayers of the day have a special resonance tonight, the ancient words feeling particularly connected to your work of preservation. After the service concludes, the great silence begins no speech until after prime tomorrow morning. You make your way to the dormitory. Your narrow bed awaits, its straw mattress covered with simple linen sheets. Before sleeping, you inspect your hands in the dim light from the corridor. The skin is slightly stained from the materials you worked with. Today a touch of iron gall ink on your left thumb, a faint residue of beeswax under your fingernails. These are the honorable marks of your vocation, badges of your participation in the great work of preservation. As you drift towards sleep, images from the astronomical manuscript float through your mind, diagrams of planetary movements, tables of calculations, illuminated depictions of scholars observing the night sky. In your half-dreaming state, these images blend with your own observations of the actual stars visible through the narrow dormitory window. Past and present, image and reality, observation and recordal merge in your consciousness as sleep gradually claims you. The next morning arrives with the sound of the bell calling you to prime, the familiar rhythm of monastic life resumes, prayers, breakfast, assigned tasks. You return to the library, eager to continue your work on the manuscript. It awaits you exactly as you left it, secured in the wooden press. When you release it and open the pages to check your repairs from yesterday, you find they have set perfectly, the structure now stable and secure. Today you will focus on the pigments used in the illuminations. Some of the brilliant blue derived from lapis lazuli has begun to flake from the page, tiny specks of intense color becoming detached from their proper place in the intricate illustrations. This precious material, more valuable than gold by weight, was transported along the Silk Road from mines in what is now Afghanistan, ground into powder and prepared with careful attention to create the vibrant hue that still catches the eye centuries later. You prepare a small amount of glera binder made from egg white that has been whipped, settled, and strained. Its preparation is something of an art in itself, requiring attention to the age of the eggs. the temperature of the room, and the length of time allowed for the liquid to clarify. Too fresh, and it will not bind properly. Too old, and it will introduce an unpleasant odor to the manuscript. With a brush made from just 3 hairs, you apply a minute amount of this glare to the areas where the blue pigment is lifting. The colorless binder seeps beneath the pigment particles, securing them to the parchment without altering the appearance of the illustration. This technique, taught to you by Brother Thomas, who learned it from his predecessor, who in turn received it from an Italian conservator trained in Florence, represents the international exchange of preservation knowledge that parallels the exchange of the texts themselves. As you work, Brother Johannes enters the library, his arms laden with a manuscript recently arrived from the abbey at Cluny. He places it carefully on a reading desk and beckons you to look. A new translation of Aristotle's Meteorologica, he explains, his voice hushed with reverence. With commentaries by scholars from both Paris and Oxford, you examine the new arrival with professional interest, noting the different binding style characteristic of Burgundian workshops, the slightly yellower parchment suggesting a different treatment process, the distinctive script of the Cluniac scriptorium. This manuscript will eventually join others on the library shelves. But first, it must be thoroughly inspected for any damage incurred during its journey and properly recorded in the library's catalogue. The arrival of this new text reminds you of the dynamic nature of the library, a static repository but a living collection that continues to grow and evolve. Knowledge is not merely preserved here, it is organized, synthesized, and ultimately transmitted to new minds. The careful work of conservators like yourself ensures that these fragile physical objects can continue to serve their function as vessels of ideas for generations to come. You return to your work on the astronomical manuscript, moving methodically through its pages, addressing each instance of flaking pigment with the same careful attention. By midday, you have stabilized all the illuminations in the first gathering of pages. The brilliant blues, reds, and golds of the astronomical diagrams now seem to glow with renewed vitality, secure in their place on the page. During the midday meal, you learn that a visitor is expected tomorrow, a scholar from the university at Oxford who wishes to consult several manuscripts in the collection, including the astronomical text you are currently treating. This news adds urgency to your work. The manuscript must be fully stabilized before it can be safely handled by someone unfamiliar with its particular vulnerabilities. You spend the afternoon applying consolidants to the remaining illuminations and reinforcing the sewing of several gatherings that show signs of stress. By vespers, the manuscript is structurally sound, its contents secure, ready to fulfill its purpose of transmitting knowledge to the visiting scholar and, through him, potentially to students and other scholars across Christendom. As you prepare the manuscript for return to its place on the shelf, you pause to appreciate the culmination of your efforts. What began as a fragile object showing signs of deterioration has been transformed not into something new, but into a more stable version of itself, its original integrity restored through your careful intervention. This is the essence of the conservator's art, not to impose oneself upon the object, but to serve as an invisible bridge between past and future. You place the manuscript in its designated spot on the oak shelf, between a copy of Pliny's Natural History and a collection of astronomical tables compiled at the observatory in Moraga. Here it will remain, protected from excessive light and fluctuations in temperature and humidity, until it is next called upon to share its contents with a seeking mind. Standing back, you survey the library shelves with a sense of quiet pride. Each manuscript represents a small triumph against the natural processes of decay, a momentary stay against the inevitable dissolution that claims all physical objects. Through the combined efforts of countless individuals across centuries, from the original authors to the scribes, to the binders, to the generations of conservators, these fragile repositories of human thought continue to exist, ready to spark new insights in minds not yet born. This, you realize, is the true significance of manuscript preservation, not merely the maintenance of physical objects, but the creation of bridges across time, allowing the thoughts of the past to engage in dialogue with the present and future. In this way, the seemingly humble work of applying adhesives, securing threads, and consolidating pigments becomes part of something far greater: the continuous transmission of human knowledge and wisdom across the generations. As twilight deepens, outside the narrow windows, you prepare your workspace for tomorrow's tasks. New challenges await a psalter with water damage, a chronicle with a broken clasp, a medical text whose oak boards have been damaged by insects. Each presents its own unique problems, requiring specific solutions drawn from the accumulated wisdom of conservation practice. But for now, as the bell calls you to the evening meal, you carry with you the satisfaction of work well done, a manuscript saved, knowledge preserved, a link in the chain maintained. In a world of constant change and occasional upheaval, there is profound meaning in this quiet act of conservation, this gentle defiance against the erosion of time. And as you join your brothers in the refectory, your hands still carrying the faint scent of beeswax and parchment, you know that though your name may never be remembered, your work endures invisible yet essential, like the countless careful stitches that hold a manuscript together across the centuries. A soft thank you to you, the listener, for journeying with us through these quiet corridors of history. The gentle hands that once preserved wisdom by candlelight would be humbled to know their story brings peace to your modern nights. If you're new here and found comfort in these tales of ancient dedication, we'd love to have you subscribe so you never miss these whispered journeys through time. May your dreams be as rich as illuminated manuscripts, and your rest as peaceful as the silence of a medieval library at dusk.